Ebonee's creativity.
Hey everybody, I'm Ebonee. This is Ebonee's Creativity. Thank you so much for joining me here on my channel. Today I am back with another flip. I want to thank you guys so much for returning. If you've been here before, it has been a little bit since I have posted. I'm very sorry about that, but hopefully in the next vlog, you will see what I have been up to. I have some exciting new content to share with you guys, so I hope you'll like it. It's different from what I've done before, so make sure you stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you have not already. But anyway, in today's video, we're going to be doing another flip, a really small piece, but sometimes you can still learn from smaller flips. So I decided to go ahead and go for this one. I hope you guys will stick around to watch the video in its entirety. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you will know when I do return. And stay tuned because I have something exciting, at least it's exciting for me, coming up for you in the next video. As you guys know, it is, well, if you've been here for a while anyway, last year around this time I did a giveaway for my birthday. This year I'm going to give myself a special treat, so I can't wait to share that with you guys. But let's hop right into this flip. Okay guys, so here's the piece that we're going to be working on today. As you can see, it kind of has an interesting look. I got this from a yard sale. You can kind of see the price sticker up there. And it says $7.50, but I paid $5 for it. And I really like the way this patina on here looks. I've never quite seen a piece of wood look like this. I just love the colors, but I decided to kind of stay true to the color that it is now, but amp it up a little bit. I was really drawn to it. I don't really know why. I prefer bigger pieces. Of course, they bring in a bigger profit, but I just wanted to try this. If you've watched any of my flips, you know I don't really do small pieces. And I don't know, this one just has some character. It was a little bit funky. I don't know why. I was just really drawn to it. It doesn't have much damage on it. You can see a few little areas right here that are kind of gouged. So I was going to leave the top natural wood, but once you patch wood, it just really, stain doesn't take as well. So those areas made me, since I knew I would have to fill or patch those areas, that made me go against my plan to keep this kind of natural wood tones and just to go ahead and paint it. So I know some people get upset with us furniture artists when we paint, but we're saving this stuff. This probably would have ended up in the trash, and it's a beautiful piece with a lot of potential. So I hope you guys will enjoy what I finally did decide to do with it. So I'm starting out by removing that price sticker, which was no big deal. Left a little bit of residue, but no big deal. And I am just taking some sandpaper and just gonna go ahead and smooth this out. Right now I'm working with a 120 grit and my orbital sander just to try to knock some of that color down, because I don't want to have to worry about any bleed through with my paint. Even though my paint is a similar color to what it is now, I just decided to try to bring it down as much as possible. As you can see, as I continue to sand, the wood grain is just getting more and more beautiful. On this piece, it was kind of hard to determine what was dirt and what was actually like a patina kind of effect and what was stained. So I don't know. I just wanted a clean slate to paint over. I always find that works out good for me in the end. So I'm just taking my time getting this top layer off. And as you can see, there is some beautiful wood underneath. Inside the drawer did look a little dirty and it had a few little paint specks in it. So I just decided to sand that too really well. And of course, I also did the face of the drawer, which I was really sad because I really did like that kind of patina look that it had going on originally. As you can see, it's not always that easy to do small pieces with this random orbital sander. It works really well for flat pieces, but as you can see, I wasn't able to get the round pieces. Sometimes when you try to use an electric sander to get those round pieces, it will flatten the curve of the piece. So my only other alternative until I can get a much nicer sander is to hand sand, which is not anybody's favorite thing to do, but you gotta do what you gotta do. So I just took my 120 grit sandpaper off of my sander and I just went to town on these legs, just working it for as long as it took to get as much of this stain that's on there off, and probably dirt, as possible. So all in all, I would say this probably took me about 2 hours to sand. So of course I'll be speeding it up so you don't have to watch me sand for 2 hours. But hand sanding is just very tedious for me, and it's something I really don't like to do. But here is how much I was able to get off. And so since I was going with a pretty dark color, I wasn't really worried about bleed through too much. And I didn't have to get this perfectly sanded. So I think it's probably at about 90% by the time I finish hand sanding. And I was okay with that because this was a lot of work for me. Luckily, there were not too many damaged areas on this piece. There's just a couple on the legs, and the major damages on the top here where I showed you those gouges. So I am going to go ahead and use this wood filler and just fill those in. My technique is kind of to pack it on the tip of my plastic tool and then try to push it into the hole. It really wasn't cooperating this time that well, but you can kind of see what I'm doing. I just get it on the tip of my tool and then push it into the hole. And sometimes I use my fingers, so don't be scared to get messy. As you can see, I try to keep my nails done, but they always get messed up. I'm never afraid to get in there with my hands if I need to. But in this case, I was able to do a pretty good job of patching by just using my little plastic tool, so that's what I did. So once that had time to dry, I took some more sandpaper, 120 grit, and I am back to using my sander, and I'm just gonna flatten those areas where I filled. So I always overfill. That's what you want to do. You want to put more wood filler than you actually need. That just helps when you go to sand it down. So you can see me doing the little areas that I filled on the top, and a few little areas on the legs also needed to be filled. But this piece was in basically good shape, as you saw from the opening clips. So not too much had to go on this, which made me really happy. So while I'm sanding, I just wanted to remind you guys to take a moment and subscribe. You can go ahead and do it now. You won't miss anything. Hurry up, just go ahead, hit that little subscribe button underneath the video, and I would appreciate that so much. And thank you to everybody who has recently subscribed. I've been seeing some growth, which has been very encouraging, so I appreciate you guys. Here, I'm just sanding off some blue paint that I got on here from a cabinet job I was doing. I laid a cabinet on top of here. You guys, this piece was my smallest flip I think I've done to date, but it took me the longest amount of time. I had so many other projects going on. Like I said, I appreciate you guys being patient with me and returning whenever I am able to post. So thank you again. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell. Up next, I have some simple green in a spray bottle, and I am just going to be using that to clean. Like I said, it was hard to determine what was stained, what was, like a patina kind of look, and what was dirt on this piece. But from the first swipe, you could see this thing was filthy. I see some spider webs on the bottom. And so I just wanted to really make sure to thoroughly clean this. So I flipped it over and cleaned it, turned it sideways and cleaned it in the drawer, underneath the drawer, all around. That's really important before you start to paint. This is just a few swipes, and as you can see, the rag is filthy. So when I finished my first round of cleaning, here's how the water was. So I just kept cleaning twice, and then I rinsed twice just to make sure all the dirt was gone because this thing was filthy. So after cleaning this, I did break out my Dollar Tree paintbrush, and I used the one that comes in the paint kit for $1 with the tray and the glove and the roller. I really like those. I've been using those from day one on my channel. I love to use them with bin now that I've upgraded my actual paintbrush, but I started out using these kits. So if you're a beginner, don't be afraid to use the Dollar Tree kits and use cheap materials because you don't want to invest in a $40 paintbrush like mine was. So if you're not sure if you're going to be flipping. So anyways, you can see me using this little brush, working in my bin. I'm only going to be doing one coat because it's not really much stain or tannins that I'm going to be trying to block. My color is pretty dark and this wood is pretty light, and most of the stain came off. You can see some of it still remaining on the legs, And 1 coat of Ben should mute out everything that I needed to mute out. So I'm not going to waste my supplies because Ben ain't cheap. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the roller for the flat part on the top and the bottom and the flat parts on the side. And at this point, I've finished up painting my legs with my paintbrush. And just a little behind the scene footage, I was going to leave that bottom platform piece that you see me painting now raw wood because I wanted some raw wood to show on this piece. But as you can see, as I was priming the top, the primer started to drip through the cracks on the top. So stuff like this happens and you just gotta go with it. So don't get discouraged. Trust me, it happens to all of us. So I'm back here sanding. I'm gonna just try to get this Ben primer coat smooth so then I can move on to painting. I'm using a 220 grit sandpaper and just trying to gently go over this. You can see the texture. Hopefully you can see that where there's texture. That's how my Ben primer looks after I'm finished putting it on. So I like to sand after I apply that primer just to smooth it out. And since I've only done 1 coat, you can see in some areas I got a little bit too happy with my sanding and I went right through that coat, which is why most people do too. But I just decided that I would fill those areas that I went through later with a little bit more primer, kind of just in that area that is exposed, and move on because I didn't need a lot of primer on this. And as you can see, I'm back hand sanding the little round legs. I like the look of round legs, but whew, they are a lot when it comes to sanding. So as you can see, this is how it looked when I finished sanding. So I did go through on some areas, but I did just go back and fill them in with Ben and then I sanded again. So now we are back to the paint. I am using some Bear paint, which I've not used before, and I'm just making it into a chalk paint by applying some baking soda. I have done this one time before, but I wasn't quite sure how much baking soda to add. So I just took my stir stick and I just stirred it until it felt right to me. I'm pretty sure there's an exact recipe that you're supposed to follow, but I'm kind of a rogue. I just do things my own way. And so I just applied it until it was thick, like the chalk style paints that I started out with, which is the Waverly paint. And here is my Old Faithful brush. And I'm just starting to apply this color. And as I look at the color, I know that paint normally dries darker, but I was going for more of like a terracotta color, and this wasn't giving me terracotta. So I kept painting, trying to convince myself that it would be fine once it dried. But honestly, I wasn't feeling the color at all. So what I did was I broke out some black chalk paint, the Waverly paint by the chalk paint by Waverly in the color ink. And I just added a dot of that, just one huge clump of it into my paint because I was not feeling this bright color. You let me know if you like this kind of orangey color. In the store, it just looked way different and I was not feeling this as I applied it at all. So you let me know what you think about this color that we started out with. So after I added the black paint, the color that you see me paint, I decided just to go ahead and let the top dry and address it after I finished with the legs. So the color that I'm using now on the leg is the color that I was going for. And it's the final color that I decided to stick with. It's hard to tell in this frame, but you can kind of see now that I'm getting closer to the top. It's just much darker, much more of a richer tone, not so bright like the top part is. So that's what I liked. That's what I was going for. More of like a terracotta, a burnt orange color, not bright orange. That's definitely not what I was going for. So let me know which color you prefer. Do you like this more terracotta, darker, more earthy tone, or the brighter tone on top? Leave me a comment and let me know. But as far as painting this, as you can see, my technique is just to get in any cracks first. So I went down that side crack and then now I am just filling in the area. I try not to go over any area too many times with my paint. That just causes issues. I try to get one good swipe to get the paint on and another swipe to smooth it out. So that's kind of what you see me doing here, getting it all on and then going over everything just to smooth it out. And I really like the formula of this. I like a thicker paint, That's what I started out with. I guess that's what I got used to. The Fusion that I have been using lately is a little bit thinner, so I was happy to get back to some thicker paint. In this frames, you probably can really see the color difference now. And I just think the color that I ended up going with was just so much more rich and beautiful. So again, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. I know some of you watch these videos to learn because you're interested in flipping, or you already are a flipper and you just want to see what other people are doing. So I try to talk about my technique a little bit in each video when I can. So in this one, you can kind of just see I'm doing very light layers. There's not too much paint on my brush at all. And I like to hold my brush really close to the bristles, like at the bottom of the ferrule. And that just helps me get more control over it. And I don't like to use thick layers, just thin layers. And really just, like I said, one swipe to get everything covered. And then now I'm going back and I'm going in one direction and I'm just smoothing over everything. That's my painting technique. So I hope this kind of close-up shot helps you out if you're looking for some painting techniques. This is mine, not saying it's the best or the only way. I just like to apply it, get it on there, and then smooth it out and make sure all my strokes go in the same direction. And when you have little pieces like this, I'm keeping the same hardware on this. Didn't see the need to change it. So I am just gonna paint it up. It's the same color, the same way I painted everything else. Getting some paint on there and then doing a few strokes just to smooth it out. Obviously on something round, it's kind of hard to just do one big stroke, especially when I'm holding it as my smoothing stroke. But as you can see, I was able to get a really good coat on here, so that turned out well. So here is how this piece looked after my first coat of paint. And I'm just kind of giving you a once over of how everything looks. I think it turned out pretty nice. But as you can see, there are some areas that are of concern to me. Particularly between the cracks, there is still some white showing. You can see that here. Look how smooth that paint looks. I like that. And then in this area, I do not know why, but it decided to bump up. So I went in with the sanding block and I sanded it down to the primer. I did not want to use my orbital sander because then I would probably go through the primer again and have my problem start all over. So I just sanded that area back gently to the primer. Basically just taking that coat of paint off, and then I was able to paint back over it. To get in between these cracks, I just saturated the tip of my brush with a lot of paint, and then I was able to push it down into the crack. So that's what you see me doing here. Really pushing it in, but still going back and doing that finishing smoothing stroke in the area where the paint piles up after I'm pushing it in. And then I was able to move on and complete my second coat of paint over this whole piece, which turned out really beautiful. I've never had paint bump up on me like it did initially. I don't know why, but hey, that's what happened. So here is the stencil that I'm going to be using for this piece. In a previous piece where I did a stencil, I did make my stencil on my Cricut, and I much preferred the stencil that I made. I would probably never buy another stencil. I'll just continue to make them on my Cricut. But if you're looking for a stenciling technique, I showed it in my previous video, but I'll show it again in case you haven't seen that one. What I do is I have these little dabbers from the Dollar Tree, and they work really, really well for this purpose. Like, it's kind of like they were made for this. You get multiple sizes, which really came in handy here because I had a few different size stencils that I was working with. And so my technique is just to make sure that there is very little paint on my dabber. You can see me dabbing it out, wiping out the excess on my hand. And I just go over this in a rocking motion, not lifting too much so as not to move the stencil at all. And on the areas where I got a little bit out of the line, I just took a microfiber cloth and wiped away. And if you don't feel comfortable wiping away, or if you're getting a little bit too close to your stencil like I am right here, then you could just paint over those areas once it dries. But I figured it's easier to wipe it off while it's wet. In the areas that were just too close for my comfort, I did patch with just a little bit of paint on the tip of a really small detailed brush. So that's what I did all around this piece. it really took me a long time to get this stencil together. I don't know why I had such good luck doing it the first time. As you can see, I cleaned my stencil off in between each use really well. So I don't know why I had problems this time, but such is life, I guess. But as for when you go to stencil, you just make sure that you thoroughly clean your stencil every time you put it down and lift it up. So as you can probably guess, this took me a while to accomplish, because after every little stripe, I had to clean my stencil. So that's one reason why I prefer the stencil that I made with my Cricut, because I was able to make it large enough to fit my piece perfectly, and I didn't have to do so much finagling to get it to work for me. I never know how much of certain things you guys want to see, but I'm just showing you some of the other areas that I did on here. I did the little knob. I tried to get one of the flowers out of the stencil, but it was really hard because the stencil was straight and the knob was round. And so I'm just showing you, I kind of bent the stencil around the knob and just did it as best as I could. It's definitely not perfect, but I'm satisfied with it, and I'm just going to keep moving. After I finished painting, I used this Wise Owl furniture salve to really make my piece conditioned on the inside and to make it smell really good. And I applied it with this Dollar Tree sponge, and these two products work really well together. So here I've taken my paint sprayer and I've zoomed in so I won't spoil the final finish. You've got to stick around for that. But I did want to show you that I do apply my top coat with my sprayer, and I have the Home Right sprayer. You can find it on Amazon. I got mine off OfferUp secondhand, but it seems to work pretty good. I did end up painting inside the drawer, so I sprayed that as well. I just sprayed everything down, and I did do 2 coats, sanding with a 400 grit sandpaper in between the 2 coats. And of course, after the top coat comes the big reveal. So thank you so much for watching this video to the end. I'm curious what you guys would pay for a piece like this. Let me know what you think I should list it for. I have a formula, as I've shared with you in a previous video, about how I price things. But in this particular instance, this piece is small, but it took as much time as a larger piece to flip because of all the handwork on the stencil. So let me know what you guys would pay for a piece like this. If you like it, if you would be interested in buying it, how much would you pay for it? I'm curious to hear you guys' responses on that. And let me know what you think about how it turned out. Leave me a comment and let me know. If you have the time, please select one of my other videos to watch from the choices in the description box below or on the screen. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys.